All right, black belts and boardrooms listeners, we've got ourselves an exciting guest today, and I am going to ask our friend Renard to give us a quick intro about who our guest is today. So, Renard, tell us about our guest.
Man, so today is Friday, so I feel Friday night lights, but we're talking about the NFL, so we're talking about Sunday night, Monday night, even sometimes Thursday. And I'm a big Saints fan, so of course, I'm usually buttoned up on here, and I had to wear the jersey because today we have the rivals in the same division of the Tampa Bay Bucks. We have Dr. Charles Harris, the vice president of technology for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Man, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh man, it's exciting. I've told people about who we're gonna have. I was like, man, I'm in that football spirit. But this one is about the technology and about you. And if you could give our listeners your origin story. Let's talk about you.
Wow. Let's see. Origin story. I am originally from the Midwest, actually, Northern Indiana. I grew up in the shadow of Notre Dame football in that arena from South Bend area. And I guess in my trajectory, moving towards technology is I think I knew technology was where I wanted to be very early in life. Didn't know what exactly it was going to be, but kind of early memories is dating myself, but the Mac and the what is it called? The video game for where the people go on the wagon train and everything else. That was like elementary school. It was, and I just was really mesmerized by computers. That was at the time when we were in elementary school. There was like at most two computers in there, and you just kind of crowded around. Got the special access to it. But yeah, my trajectory was really I kind of I've been first of all, I've been a sport fan my entire life. I played probably every sport under the sun. I was a soccer player, a basketball player, which is actually my first love, which is basketball. Played football for a season, played baseball. So, being active was what I love to do. And when I started to figure out what I wanted to do, it was really layered into technology. And initially, I kind of fell in love with software development. That is actually where I kind of went from kind of a technician into software development for a number of years and had managed a number of software development teams and SAP, .NET, a number of different languages, and kind of fell in love with the holistic aspect of technology and technology strategy. I think it kind of married my love of really learning myself as far as leadership style and understanding that I think when I went through my career, I started to develop my leadership style and how I wish someone in my earlier days of my career had helped me lead me through my career. It was because there is no other technology person in my family at current. I mean, my brother's family, my sister's family included. I'm it, and so it was one of those arenas. There was nobody there to kind of usher you into what's possible, but for most of us, we at our age, we grew up in this time frame when we saw the advent of the internet. We saw, by the time you got to college, you got your first email address and everything else. So it was like it was new forged territory for us. And on top of that, being a first generation graduate for me and my siblings, there wasn't anything in front of you that somebody was kind of pointing the way on. These are your options. You just kind of saw what was there and jumped onto it. Um, and even if you kind of look at my career, it was pretty eclectic, right? There was no general direction that I went in, but hindsight, I see it paid well for me as far as being in a position like where I am. Is I have some insight into the infrastructure, the software development, the security aspect, the data analytics. These were all things I had my hands in throughout my career that have kind of culminated into me designing how I viewed strategy for any organization that I come into leadership on. And then my leadership style was that of really working with trying to figure out how do we bridge the gap between communication and technology, because as I grew up, most of our technology folks couldn't communicate to save their lives. I mean, it was just, you had your software developers, they love to be in the corner. Don't say anything to me. I'll give you what I give you. You got your engineering folks that they thought they were better than everybody, and they kind of talk down to you because it's like, why don't you know this? And probably your best communication folks were probably your support staff, just because it was something they had to do every day. And so I wanted to be able to be in an environment and develop an environment where IT was more than just the ones and zeros, the wiring and everything else, that we are really developing into a partnership style with the organization. Because if you look at IT within any organization, at this stage in these generations, we're the heartbeat of every organization. And it's not saying that because that's what I'm a part of, but everything that we do is for every other department. There is not very much that's done for IT that's for us. Like, right? I'm not buying new technology so we can use it. I'm buying it so we make your job better. Like, you get other departments, marketing, they're going to want tools for marketing. They are the users of it. We are like this centerpiece, these tentacles within the organization. And being able to be in those positions, you got to have an understanding. You almost have to have a full business understanding of the organization in order to properly implement technology and to be that support surface for the organization. And so I knew at somewhat of an early age as well that the leadership aspect was the right path for me. As much as I love the technology side of everything, I felt like the vision that I could have, that entrepreneurial aspect you get as a tech leader, is where I wanted to spend my career, because I knew I could create environments that those with the technical experience could flourish even better than they could in most environments. And that's always been my goal, is to leave an organization better for me having been there, and to leave the staff that I'm there with more tools and more capability. If we ever part ways, is that at this point you've learned to be a better leader, you've learned to evaluate technology better, and you know how to be a better team player behind an environment that I try to create for my staff.
Man, if all I can say, I would work for you. You give me that skill. Where do I sign up so I can work for you? Because you sound like you're a passionate leader. You're looking to build other leaders. I say that a lot,
Yes.
and I can hear where you're developing. And like you said, you want to leave it better than you started. You want to upskill everyone. You want to create other leaders, and that is a skill that not everybody has for the most part.
Yeah.
So that is great. I want to dive into, now you're the VP of the Tampa Bay Bucks now. What is a life in a day for you and your team, for an NFL team? Because most people don't know
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
takes to keep all that running.
Yeah. So, okay. So the first thing I get asked all the time is, what do you guys do in the off season? Everything, every single thing. So, there, for us in a year, there are two seasons. There's the off season and there's in season, right? I would say off season is probably the busiest that it can be within that year, right? Because off season is when you're trying to get all the upgrades done. Off season is when all the changes and everything are viable for you. Our cycle, even for our budget cycle, is kind of coincides with our off seasons. Once all that is done and all the lights shut down, we're going full pace trying to implement all of our strategies in preparation for the season coming. On top of the fact that With the way we're positioned, we're also involved in concerts, events, everything that happens at that stadium. So it's not like anything really slows down. It's just not the bright lights busy. It's a little different. In season is, I say, more stressful because in season you want everything to go off flawless. So all that prep, all those new things that you've done in preseason, you're trying to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch. Depending on how popular you are, the security side may get heavier because you want to make sure all those gaps that you're preparing for are secure for something as very visible and big as your stadium performance. And then just answering to all those little things that crop up because you want everybody performing their best, right? You want the interview situations to be clean and good. You want coaches to be able to communicate with each other during game. All that great stuff is just a part of the in season. And but that off season is where all the magic happens to make sure that we stay up to par with what we need to do and to really drive that home. But a day in the life really, your usual busy season in the off season. During the season, we're kind of doing a cycle week to week on from game to game, right? You have a game, we do a lot of debriefs on what went right, what went wrong, what do we need to look out for, um, changes when coaches have changes or needs, when staff, when on game day have needs, and just kind of keeping a lot of the stuff afloat during that time frame. But every day we do the same thing. We have our security practices that we do. We have, our upgrades, our security patches. We have a lot of configuration stuff where we're trying to optimize for the back office folks to perform. And even a bit of data management, for a lot of that analytics, as we get a lot of feedback games that fans are performing, and it gives us a lot of insight on how do we get better game to game, how do performances get, and as a technology group, we're really trying to be more helpful in helping them get those turnarounds and those opportunities to improve from day to day.
Man, it sounds like you said. I'm assuming that everyone has to move pretty fast for the most part. Normal business. I always say, like, when I started at where I am now, I had to up my game to move faster. I thought I moved fast until I came to 1%. I was like, man, I got to move even faster. So I'm assuming it's the same way working for a football team.
Yes, yes, because everything had to be done before they told you it needed to be done. So you're hitting the ground running with that. Um, and I recognize the same thing. I am used to being in an environment where I do like to plan. I like to think through a lot of it. I find now you have to think a little bit faster, plan a little bit faster, right? We still don't want to get into a situation, and it's an easy habit to get into. It's just you get something, you just go do it, like, so it's always a big practice to take the momentary time out and say, hey, let's run through our due diligence just a little bit before we go fast pace into it, because those are the areas where you can get yourself in trouble, and make moves that you probably, if you had took a minute to think about it, you'd have been better prepared for any type of outcome. So that fast-paced asset aspect is something that it has to be done, but you always try to position your staff to have the right tools, the right education, the right leadership to be able to manage those mitigations, change management. How are we doing? Are we documented? Who do we need to talk to? Who are the players? When you're doing things, because we have these two sides of the house, the business and the football. And honestly, they both rely on you. They're different needs, using the same network, using some of the same tools, and so being able to make sure which goes back to my earlier statement, which is being intimately knowledgeable about your organization and what they're doing, so that you almost pre-think a lot of these things, and I better check with this department because I know that they're using these databases and this resource. So if we do any changes, let's make sure that they're on board and communicate with them and find out some of their use cases on what they're doing. So those are often the challenges. Just in football, there's a lot to juggle. Demand for everybody is very different. And I'm sure a lot of organizations are like that. But we even get some demands that come from the NFL itself. So there's this broadened relationship when you talk about the league itself, your internal football, your internal business, and all these drivers come together where you have a lot to navigate when you're in this environment.
That Charles, I am hearing so many of the same undertones as I do in my organization.
Yep. Yep.
It just is a different setting. So, I love the fact that you latched onto leadership very early on in your career. So, NFL is all about high performance. I mean, you've got people running, what is it, 40 yards in very short amounts of time, right? So the athletes are performing at a very high level. So as a technology leader, how do you think about your high performing teams and building high performing teams? So performance management, what does it look like from your vantage point philosophically and tactically?
Yeah, so a lot of my goals on upping my team's performance really starts with me communicating with them, right? Is um, I often come into an organization and I talk to each one of my teams. What are your goals? What are your personal goals? Like, what is it you're trying to accomplish? Are you an individual who I love what I do, I just want to do it better, period? Are you one who has ambitions to be a better leader, to branch out into other sections of IT? And the reason I like to ask that is it's all about motivation, right? Most of us who had kids, you understand not all of your kids are motivated the same way. I learned that very quickly. I have three, love every single one of my kids. Little shout out to my wife and kids on this, but I realize each of them has their different motivations, the different things that drive them. But as a leader, once you can get around that aspect of leadership, then when you start to formulate your plan for each individual, you can almost cater that, right? If I have the desired leader, I'm going to put you in front of projects. I'm going to mentor you on how do you communicate, how do you navigate the politics of the office. What are how do you formulate a plan behind an organization to be able to do that? That's where your value comes in. In return, we have the greater team goal. So a lot of that drives from let me lay out the strategy, and then I begin to layer on some of those key opportunities and those key education opportunity, whether it's going to leadership training opportunities, whether it's getting you certified in certain areas, and then start to develop not only the organizational roadmap, but kind of layer in their individual roadmaps alongside of that so that we're adjusting titles, we're adjusting opportunities. And with that, they start to have a lot of investment into their own growth within the organization. And to me, that's been very successful because now I'm not pushing you to be something that maybe either past history or something has driven you into. If you're a network engineer and you want to take some initiative to move into cybersecurity, I'm going to give those opportunities. Maybe we layer in some education behind that and those opportunities to navigate into those spaces because it's a natural evolution of where you're going. And I find that not only gives you the opportunity to keep staff, right? Because now you're with somebody who's invested in your future, which, that's the goal I'm trying to show that I'm invested into your future. And two, it gets me to the point where I can get the most out of you because this was your plan. It wasn't mine. This was your plan. This is yours. You have some vested interest because you came to me and you told me this is what you want to be. You're trying to prove to me that you can be what you said you wanted to be. I'm just kind of a guide, a help to point you in some things that I know will get you to where you go. But it's ultimately up to you to spend that time and that energy to read, to learn, to grow, to stretch yourself and do those things. So uh, and again, these all stem from things that I figured out I had to do for myself, in order to get at least to the point that I was at. One of my earliest jobs behind leadership was UPS, one of the toughest jobs you'll ever do, right? Organization, I can say, does a great job in leadership training. There's once you hit supervisor, the first thing they do is they send you away to a 2-week program where you're just inundated with leadership growth, public speaking, conflict resolution, just getting to know the organization inside out, the history, and what their philosophy is. And one of the biggest things is I was not originally very good at speaking in public, and they would take you for 2 weeks every day, 1 to 2 public speaking, where you were just you it just you did it, and they give you your pros and cons, and every day you'd have a different topic you'd pick, and you just go through it. And I say that because that was a stretching moment for me. It was a thing that I had to be willing to do, the thing that wasn't comfortable to do. But as you continually do it, you say, you know what, isn't bad. I'm I'm capable of more than I thought I was. And so that's the that's I think the education that I always try to do in any mentoring or opportunity to educate somebody, that as you progress, be willing to do the thing that's uncomfortable for you in order to find out just what you're capable of. And those are, to me, lifelong goals, because it's just how I started this path to begin with. When I went to go get my bachelor's degree, I was adamant, I'm done with school. I am absolutely done with school. And got an opportunity to go to a master's program at Purdue. Um, and, I decided, okay, I'll do it. I thought it'd be great for my career, kind of add a little something on to my career. And as I was finishing the program, one of my professors, as I finished giving my thesis to finally graduate, he pulled me aside. He was like, "Have you ever thought about going to get a PhD?" He was like, "Your research was good. I think you would do really well in it." And I looked him in the eye. I said, "You're out of your mind. There's no way. I'm done. Like, this is it. I'm finished." And that little nugget resonated in my head for another year. And uh, I was like, "Well, what would that be like? What is that possible? I don't know anybody with a PhD. Like, what would that be like?" And, that was the little thing that rung in my head, that after a while I decided, you know what, let me go check it out. Let me see what it's about. And you realize that you're capable of a lot more than you think you are in your head. It takes that opportunity to be willing to stretch yourself and to be and do more than what you currently are at, because it's out there. And I haven't too often met anyone that, if you're willing to challenge yourself, you can do the thing that nobody ever thought you could do.
So you've got tremendous experience and very intentional foresight about how you wanted to groom yourself as a leader. Was there a mentor that helped you shape this view, or did you just kind of find mentors and decided you wanted to copy certain styles and make it your own?
Um, I did not explicitly have a mentor. I would say at the most, I had some really good people in my life, and I think my leadership style became very much a tapestry of things that I had seen, experiences I've had. Not to say that I have been or that I am a great leader all of my career or all of the opportunities, but it was those things that I ran into and the challenges, and being willing to reflect and say, how did I handle that? How could I have done better? What have I seen out there or read out there that I could glean some of the things that other leaders that I've seen done these great transitions with their teams, their staff. Um, and I really do. I take a lot of that in and I kind of make it my own. I always tell leaders, I can give you whatever, but you have to make it your own. Whatever it is, you have to be genuine about it. If you're not a touchy feely guy, don't pretend to be a touchy feely person, male or female. Don't pretend to be, but figure out how to have compassion with who you are in these leadership positions. If you're a go get it person, you're probably going to build teams that are very go getter type of people. If you're, a very people oriented person, chances are you're going to start building teams like that. Just be authentic to who you are, but never ever remove the compassion or the empathy out of your leadership style. And you have to figure out what's authentic about that. There are some people who are very, like they remember the birthdays every year. I know all of your kids' names and their birth. There are people like that. I don't think I go that far, but when I'm invested in you, I am invested in what we're trying to accomplish as a group. And I always want the teams that I am responsible for to know that my number one job is them in every position. Of course, I'm here for the organization. My first and foremost are the people who are in the trenches with you. That staff is my goal is to protect them from the politics, from all the drama that goes on within the organization, and to give them a place where they can be their best self in performance. But that will always resonate outside of that group, and that's the goal because I'll deal with the stuff as long as we're doing what we need to do internally to be the best that we can be. That's all I can ever ask anybody. Perfection is not the goal, excellence is. And those are two very different things. Is that as you approach excellence, you get as close as possible as you can to perfection because that excellence means you're performing at your highest level. And every time you're doing that, you're stretching your levels every time. And so the more that your focus is excellence, the better the overall performance of the team becomes.
Hmm.
Powerful.
Man, that's that. I just had a conversation with a guy on my team today, and I told him about upskilling himself.
Yeah.
I said, don't look at what's current. Look at what you're trying to be in the future, and upskill yourself to where you get to make the easiest decision possible.
Yeah.
So if that's staying with the company or going somewhere else, you upskilled yourself enough where you make yourself more valuable. So I I I 100% agree with that. And I wanna go a little bit back. You made a decision that you wanted to be a leader. What day was that? What was that like when you said, I don't want to do, I don't want to be engineer. I don't want to do, data analytics, etc. I want to become a leader. What was that like for you?
Mm. It was probably right before I got my first supervisor position. Um, and I think it was out of a challenge to myself. And again, I say my leadership style was, and this is not a knock to any leaders that I've had previously, but we've all been into jobs where it's like you don't like how leadership is performing, right? And you feel like I can do it better. I'm a type of person like, let me see if I can do it better, right? And it was one of those things that the opportunity came about, some leadership had exited, and I kind of put my hat in the ring. At that time, I had a master's degree, and I was like, let's jump into this and let's see if I have what it takes to do so because I have a vision in my head, and I think driving me to that was the whole aspect is I had this vision in my head of what working in this industry should look like. And the only way that you can get that out is to be the person making the decisions in those arenas. And again, I always say I think I gravitated towards it because there was a level of entrepreneurial thing that I wanted to itch, but I wasn't in a position at those times early on to branch out and to go do the daring, entrepreneur, do my own business type of thing. But this was my way of testing those waters and to see, what do you have to be this type of leader to be successful? I wasn't convinced. I wasn't convinced that do as I say type of guy is what it takes. I wasn't convinced of being the secretive. I'm not going to tell you everything. Just navigate without that. I wasn't convinced that involving me as an employee to invest in me wasn't the way to go. And when you start to get the feedback that you get from the staff that you lead, that's what tells you you're going. That's how I envision my success is the people that work with me. That's my gauge of success. It's not about how high I get. It's not about what my boss tells me. It's about those folks that when you leave a company, they're hinting to you that take me with you. It's about those folks that's like, you've been the best boss that I've ever had. It's those types of things because we all work. We all work because we have to. Let's just be honest. Most of us would be doing some nice leisure stuff. Me making your life a living hell within this environment does us no good. Absolutely no good. We have to be here. So why can't this be a great environment where we become better, we do better, and we do good work, and you get a little bit of excitement because there's a vision behind it. Not just a company vision, but there's a vision with this individual group that we've created this environment that creates some type of energy behind what we're doing. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. That's ultimately what I'm trying to accomplish. IT is IT everywhere, anywhere, football, healthcare, and I've been in a lot of different industries. I've been in healthcare, education, satellite communications, sports and entertainment, transportation. IT is IT everywhere. We got to secure it. We got to fix it. We got to implement it. We do all those things. But to have an environment where you can accomplish those things, be creative, and to put a little bit of yourself into the organization, that's the environment that I always try to create because you give people their best selves and they will give it back to you every single time.
Man, that's true. That's true.
Yes.
It's funny. Like your story of being in different industries is the same as mine. I've gotten a chance to be in multiple industries throughout my career, so it makes you in a sense easily adaptable to a new environment. Be like, hey, I know IT. I just got to understand this environment, but I know what's going on. So it makes you adaptable in many different ways. But then it also gives you a different view of I see how IT functions in these different areas. You know, one might be a little bit slower, one might be faster, etc. But it makes you adaptable. And I want to go into, you know, you've been the VP of technology for the Tampa Bay Bucks for a couple of years. Go back and tell us that process of how did that happen? How did you get into the organization, et cetera? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people wonder how do you even get to work in technology or any department for a NFL or pro franchise?
Um, yeah, mine is a little unique because I wasn't necessarily looking for it. Somebody reached out to me. It was my previous job. I was working for a healthcare organization, nuclear pharmaceutical company that, it had 40, 50 locations around the US. I was working remote at the time, and an executive recruiter had reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we got a VP of technology opportunity in Tampa," and I was like, well, I'll hear you out and see what it's about. Had no idea, that it was for a club. It was just honestly, I saw the job description with no expression of what real industry it was, but I was like, this is kind of cool. I could easily do this. It would be great. And upon talking to him, it was with the Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers come and call, and you kind of gotta see what opportunity is there. And I told him, I was like, if they're interested, then I'd definitely be open to having discussions. And it kind of just snowballed from there. And here I am. I find myself here. And honestly, at the time, before they had called me, I had moved to Chicago. So I used to live in Orlando, had moved to Chicago. Um, Moved cross country. It was just an opportunity. I got, up north, I got family and everything there. And when they called, I was like, well, I kind of like, I'm not in Florida anymore. But in further, discussing, my wife and I was like, okay, let's take a look and see what this is about. And sure enough, ended up going from there back down to Florida. So it was an interesting transition on how we move. But if anyone is looking to get into sports, obviously there are not a whole lot of sports as far as particularly in football, but there are a whole lot of sports venues. I mean, if you think about everything from the different types of sports and the different areas that locally D1, even colleges. Those are some real beginning opportunities you start to look for in getting in the environment, right? Because those transitions, just by nature, they happen to be a bit easier going from one type of sports, either venue or entertainment type of setup to the next. So those would probably be the real ways that you get into those areas. And I've seen quite a few opportunities that are out there, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, or whatever. I would say just really keep your eyes open, network as much as possible because, in communities, there are connections, right? For instance, for here, me in Tampa, I have a great network of folks, everything from the Port Authority over here where the boats are. I know the CIO there. We're good friends. The airport, the VP there that leads that, good friend of mine. So there's this community, particularly in IT, that we kind of gravitate around each other and really build relationships. So when you do a lot of that network and you're building these relationships, there are people that are like, oh, I noticed somebody's looking for something over here in this sports venue. I'm gonna have them keep an eye out on something for you. So that was actually something very new that early in my career is one of those things I wish I had have known earlier, which is networking. I was not good at it early in my career. I was of the mindset, just get good at what you're doing and people will figure that out. Not going to happen. It's just the nature of the beast. It's the networking aspect, right? Because nobody's going to advertise your skill set. No one's going to automatically just grab you off the shelf. And that networking is what I like to say is it builds trust. It builds that inbuilt trust between you and future opportunities where you're an unknown quantity until you're able to build those networks and have those people to vouch for you because they've been in circles with you. They're hearing what you're doing. They know where you come from, and you don't become this unknown quantity. So, definitely the networking aspect is huge if you want to begin to traverse these areas.
I've met executives who love to network, and I've met executives who don't like to network. So it's interesting you fall into the former camp where you love to network, you know?
There is, I have an appreciation for networking. If I had my way, I would be at home. I, you know, I would be at home, but on two sides of it. One, locally I've really gotten some great people that I've interacted with. So um, I have because I know when I first got here, my wife had to be like, you need to go start doing that. And almost every time I'm like, I'm glad I went because you always end up meeting some great person. You always end up making these great connections. And so I never want to rob myself of that as much as I don't want to do it. And on the other side, the networking capability definitely as an executive, you want to keep your thumb on the pulse of where the talent is. And I do have places I can reach out to. And if I ever have a need for talent, I know at least three or four names right off the bat that I can call to say, who do you know? Where can I get somebody who can do this? So it's valuable. And there are times that I don't like it because I'm like, I've worked all day. I do not want to go to this mixer or this dinner. I want to go home, but I have to just figure out how to balance and do that weighing of where's the value on this one? Is there going to be another one sometime? Like I'll go to the next one. just to do that. But I've seen so much value out of the networking aspect that I can't necessarily just push it off to the side and be like, okay, I'm a VP now, so I don't need it. That is never the case. Like it's there's so much value that comes back to it that you just have to figure out how to balance the two.
Yeah. So you know, I'm hearing two themes there in your statements there, Charles. So I just want to just pick on that just a little bit more. So I know for some folks, you know, they look at networking as a transactional event. You know, I'm going there because so and so is going to be there, and I want to be able to, you know, tap shoulders or whatever it is in those events. And then there's somebody like yourself who is actually investing, building equity with the community, with the folks around you in different organizations and industries. For somebody who is a, you know, new leader or aspiring to be leader, you know, it's very easy for them to fall into the trap of, hey, this is a transactional event, some big
Yeah.
wig, some whatever sponsored event, I'm going to be there, I have to be there to butt shoulders and so on. How would you guide somebody who is aspiring to be a leader like yourself in the future? What would you guide them with respect to networking? How would you direct their attention so they invest their time to build this equity?
So I would say, much like I've told my kids, is there are categories of friends, there are categories of networks, and you just need to learn to be aware of those, right? If again, there are circles of folks that we have drummed up very genuine friendships that go beyond the professional aspect of what we do. And then there are transactional relationships, and I think those are fine. Those are absolutely fine. You just want to spend your energy and your time on what's valuable for you. And that could be time based, right? Is if you're in need of a new opportunity, those transactional ones may be a little bit more valuable. So you're going to take those morning coffees, you're going to take those, you know, lunch meetings, you're going to go to some of those events because it's an important aspect. I don't think the transactional is wrong. Just understand where to place it at, right? For the friendships, those have encouragement value. And sometimes even the encouragement slash transaction is that friend that you have has an inside track on an opportunity for you or for your staff within the organization. So you just need to know how to place those because what you don't want is to have the wrong expectations for those types of relationships, right? If I'm gonna have the friendship relationship with somebody, then I'm not gonna treat that networking opportunity as just a transactional. Because we're just gonna do whatever we do, be at these events and whatever else. I know I probably have to take a bit more care of those relationships. So as you navigate it, just be aware of it and don't be one to get caught behind it that maybe they ask you for an opportunity or if you have anything and the fact that you ignore them, now this person's sullying your name because you didn't understand that it was a transactional relationship, right? So just being aware of them helps you to properly navigate those relationships and be cognizant of that everybody doesn't approach with the same expectation. Everybody doesn't approach with the same even ethics as you do. So if you're more conscious of yourself and your environment, then the navigating of those tends to be a little bit easier because you're aware of the potentials for how those interactions will go and what the expectation is.
Great point about ethics, because not everybody operates at a high level of ethics either.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So when you think about mentorship and mentoring other folks, what are some of the dimensions you like to bring in very early on into the conversation for somebody who's asking for your mentorship?
Um, One, I'm going to ask them what do they expect to get out of mentorship from me, right? Is I want to be able to one provide what you want, and two, I want to hear if you have any targets or goals, right? If you just want to be mentored just to be close to me for whatever reason, then I'm going to ask you to go back and think about what is it you want to do and where do you see yourself in these coming years, and then it's that what is your vision for where you want to be? Um, to me, having vision is probably the only way that you're going to get somewhere. If you allow just anything to happen, then anything will happen, and you will not have control of it. I remember early on is when I was looking at leadership, I knew leadership was where I wanted to go, but it didn't stick in my head CIO until some years later. And it was really looking at folks, and even interestingly enough, uh, just looking and reading articles about CIOs and the great things that they're doing for these large what is her name? Meg Whitman was one of the early ones that I read when she was at eBay, and how she had leveraged her career in what she was doing and some of the great things that she was a part of. And honestly, this random woman's, CIO journey was so intriguing to me. It's like, I think that's kind of the direction that I want to head. That's that target, right? Is, you're driving this mechanism of technology behind pretty much leading an organization. I know there's a CEO, but you're the engine behind that whole thing. And that's when that mental target hit me, is that that's where I'm headed. That's where I want to go. I want to know, where do you see yourself? And I always tell, especially young folks who are looking at careers and everything else, I say, regardless of where you are, I want you to go find a title and a position that you feel is out of your reach. And I want you to start looking for people in those titles and see what their roadmap was. See what they were doing. What are they educating themselves? Where did they work? What titles do they have on their way there? That's real easy now with LinkedIn. It doesn't take a whole lot. Go do that. And then you can start to see, what type of things do I need to be picking up along the way as I head towards that target. Because it gives you the long drive, and it gives you little bits to start picking up to say, oh, they were involved in, networking. Oh, they did a little cybersecurity over here, and they did that. Does it mean that your path has to be the same? No, but it gives you ideas on the trajectory, on things that was valuable for them. And when you start doing more than one, then you get the opportunity to nitpick and choose and to go into those environments, and to be able to do those things and make it your own. But at least you're not floundering. You don't know where to, you kind of drawn to every little certification and some trendy thing. Start looking at people who've been successful and start to see where you fit in into those opportunities.
Sage advice.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree. I like in my career, I did not know I wanted to be an executive at first. I tell everybody I just needed a job. I just got out of college. I need a job.
Yeah,
Let me get a
yeah,
job first. I'll figure everything out. But now, just moving on in your career, I always tell anyone that reevaluate your career every 3 to 5 years.
yeah. Yep.
See where you are, see if that makes sense. You might start off as an IC, an individual contributor, and then you might want to go into management and then leadership, because I always say there's a difference between the two. So I always
Sure.
tell people, reevaluate every 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Make sure you're still on that path, or that path may had a new chapter. Like you said, like I said earlier, I didn't know I wanted to be an executive. I was like, man, I just need a job. I got bills to pay. What can I do in order to do that? But you've done so much in your career. You wind up developing a path and going forward in that. Is there one thing you see in that special person that you're looking to mentor? You can say, hey, this is someone that can step into the same role that I have at some point. What are you looking for in that particular person?
A lot of times what I look for is the self motivation. What are you doing without the guidance, right? Is who's taking that initiative when a leadership opportunity comes up? You may not be good at it, but you're stepping in there, right? Who's who's open to the a little idea had been dropped, you picked it up and you ran with it. Those are the types of things that are going to get you successfully into those leadership positions, right? When you hear somebody say, hey, I read this book, there was a great leadership book, nobody asked you to do it, you went and did it, right? If you're looking for the quick hit, and like, I'm gonna grab you out of the crowd and see that you're capable, it's those types of things, because that's a person who's eager to do the thing. I'm not necessarily looking for somebody who wants to work the long hours and they're just, that's still a doer. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's absolute, and it's a good, a good thing that you're willing to do that. It's not about the long hard hours. It's about doing the thing that this isn't even really a part of my job. Like I'm an individual contributor. Why am I taking the initiative to put together a plan for an upgrade or for an idea for the department or something like that? Those are leadership habits, and those are just that's one of those things you would just say, okay, this is a natural thing. Um, an example that I had done early in my career, and I go back to UPS because it was a very pivotal time. I worked there for like 6 or 7 years, and it was a very pivotal time because at that same time I was going to school, working full time, had a family. It was a lot. But at that time, I was a technician. Technician goes out, and actually, it was one of my first salary jobs that I had had. And we went out and we did support for customers out in the field. So we would take out computers, monitors, label printers, dot matrix printers, set them up in these warehouses and people's offices. And it was a system that they had for volume customers. They could do shipping right there, drop a label, UPS would come pick it up. And we supported I lived in Indianapolis at the time, and we supported the whole surrounding area in Indianapolis, a group of us technicians. I had realized in some of our audits that we were having problems with that inventory because we own those computers. And auditors would come by and say, let me see what your audit is for your inventory. And it was a little access database on the IT assistant's desk. And pretty much how we recorded that inventory was to write down serial numbers, give it to her, and she'd key it in. Now, if you went out and replaced something, it was a hit or miss whether we come back with that inventory, and there was nothing really holding us to it. So I asked my supervisor, I was like, hey, in my off time between calls, can I develop something? You know, we have VB.NET licensing, we have SQL database with licensing. He said, as long as nothing else fails, go ahead. So what did I do? This was the time I was falling in love with software programming. I developed an entire inventory program, inventory system that not only were they able to use like USB drives, you would go out, put your USB drive that had a little applet on it. It would come up and you type in all your serial numbers, and those serial numbers would be stored into the registry of that computer. So each time you went out, you just plugged in and you changed the serial numbers and you bring it back. You plug that USB into the computer at the office and it upload all that inventory. So we had a whole inventory system so that next time that our audits came around, we passed those audits perfectly and did it for the entire state on how we managed our inventory for all that stuff. So I knew what was at what customers by their ID, anything that was in any of our hub locations where they had warehouses, those that we could look up all that inventory and see where everything was. And I just say that because those were the things where when you see something's wrong, you want to fix it, right? When you see something that's not right or something that can be better, you want to fix it. That is leadership attitude, right? It's not status quo. We just do whatever we can. If you really want to be in this type of environment of technology, technology is about getting better, not getting worse. And technology is definitely not about staying the same. It's change. You have to be comfortable with change to be in this industry because change is happening whether you want it to or not. And you have to be willing to be comfortable with the uncomfortable in order to do this type of work.
And that's true. That is very true. So, we're getting close to time, and I ask everybody. I've asked several of our guests that we've had. I always ask, "What's your theme music? What's that music that gets you pumped up when you're trying to go into the office? What's the music for you?"
All right. I got one of my favorite artists, LL Cool J, Mama Said Knock You Out. Yeah. So I say that that's the theme music because I feel like that's the attitude you have to run into every challenge, right? Is you have to be willing to put up the fight for your career, for your future, for the organization that you're battling for. is you got to be ready to hit the ground running. You got to be ready to put up that fight. And so when mama say knock you out, it's got to get
I love that. I love that.
done.
For a second, I thought you were gonna go. I'm bad. The original to start off.
Yes.
Man, I
It,
thought you were gonna do that one.
it was a play, but this one it's about to fight. It's about to fight.
Oh man, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Charles, I gotta say it was great to have you on our podcast today. We learned so much from you. Like I said, I would work for you. Easy.
Thank you.
I would work for you. I think Amir would too. I like, hey, where do we sign up? Because you are truly being an empathetic leader. You're leaving a legacy wherever you go, and you can see it the way you're talking about, the way you love what you do. You can tell that you are an empathetic leader that want to see other people grow, and you're trying to
Yeah.
create other leaders.
Yeah.
So, we appreciate you having you on the podcast. And before we go, I'll ask you one more before we go. What
Okay.
is the last thing you want to leave for the Black Belts and Boardrooms audience?
I guess the last thing that I would leave is, you know, um, in all of this that we do, technology, leadership, be willing to do the daring, right? I think there's so much in pretty much corporate industries that tries to force you to be consistent and do the same thing over and over, to approach things the same way. Be willing to do the audacious. The audacious is where the marks are had, right? The audacious is where the opportunities and the energy comes, right? And not to say that everything has to be uncharted territory, but always be looking for that opportunity to be innovative. Always look for that opportunity to do things and see things differently, because we won't know what works until we have people out there willing to do the audacious in what we do. And so just be daring every day.
I love that. I love that. That's the way you end a podcast off.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for our Black Belts and Boardrooms audience, we will see you on the next one.